To substitute or not to substitute? That's the question in today's Domestique Cycling Podcast episode. Movistar team manager Eusebio Unzue dropped some ideas about allowing substitutions during Grand Tours. And now it's our turn to reflect on his
I've
takes.
got the spores, the sickness. There's the twins in my brain.
Yves, how are you, mate?
I'm doing fine. It's a busy period. It's the build up towards the big start of the cycling season. But I'm ready for it.
It's been a while since you joined the podcast. I think it was Two Down Under preview the last time you were here. But now
Yeah.
Unzue dropped some ideas and you're back in the game.
Well, yeah, it's a hot topic. It was a hot topic the last few days, and it's an interesting thing to talk about and to debate.
Well, before we discuss the substitution topic, I should maybe rephrase what Unzue said. So here we go. He said, why not allow substitutes when a rider is forced to abandon a Grand Tour during the first week? All teams prepare 10 to 12 riders for a Grand Tour, so you still got 2 or 3 of them at home after the start. And then he added, of course, you can't change for technical or tactical reasons, but in football, substitutions weren't allowed for a long time either. Why don't we give it a trial? Let's take the step and see if we like it. A change is needed. Yves, what were you thinking when you read that?
Well, the original article was released on L'Equipe, but if I remember correctly, you were the guy who posted it on our account, and I saw it there, and I thought, wait, let me read that again. It was weird to see that idea because I don't think it's something that belongs in cycling to have a substitution system. It's yeah, cycling has to change. It's something he mentioned at the end of his interview as well, but that's not the change that cycling needs. It's a recipe for the disaster because how are you gonna yeah monitor everything, and it can be used in a strategy way or in a tactical way, but how are you going to monitor that? It's so difficult to to even do it practical. So only that's one of the biggest reasons that it's impossible to do. Plus it's against tradition of cycling. It's you just yeah erase cycling history, and a part of a grand tour is surviving 3 weeks. If you crash, if you have bad luck, it's part of the game. Of course, it's we always hear the heroic stories about a rider is riding stages with a broken finger or something. That that's something that can't happen in my opinion, because it remains a rider's health, but it's part of the sport, and to get a substitution in, no.
But don't you think fans are making crashes too romantic, or making heroes of riders who finish stages with broken
Yeah,
kneecaps, with collarbones? We publish pictures of riders with, their hands are totally ripped off after Paris-Roubaix, for instance. Don't you think that needs to change?
well, you have two examples here. The broken kneecap thing surely is something that we can't see as something heroic, because it all those guys in the peloton, all those cyclists are human beings, have a family, have children, and it's like us. We watched cycling when we were kids, 6 7 years old, and then you hear the stories about rider A was finished his stage with a broken kneecap. That's not something that should be seen as heroic, because children will say, "Oh, it's not that severe. He can ride 2 3 stages further." But the children or other people don't realize that it can have an influence on the rest of their life. But then on the other side, you have the wounded hands in Paris-Roubaix. That's something that's part of Roubaix. You can have all the best luck that you have in the race and you can win it, but still the hands can be completely wounded. So that are two different things.
You already mentioned the technical, tactical reasons. Unzue had something to say about that as part of his substitution plan. So he said, when a rider crashes, why not let him finish the stage in an ambulance instead of on the bike? In the evening, he could get himself checked and maybe start again in the next stage. But now riders need to ride their bikes with too much pain if they want to continue the next day. We need to protect the rider's health. And I think he's completely right on this one. Even though if you don't support substitutions, this is a good point.
So the point is that a rider can finish within the ambulance, and if he's cleared medically, he can still start the stage after.
Exactly.
That that's difficulty. This difficult as well because remember it's stage 16 in the Tour de France, Alpe d'Huez, and there is a crash. For example, Groschartner, he's a main domestique for Pogacar in a race. He crashes and he's bruised. Yeah, you can use it tactically and say, okay, I'm gonna do as it's a little bit worse than it actually is. Save me the ascent of the Alpe d'Huez and be ready to end fresh for the stage after. So even that is something that's difficult to interpret at the moment. Like, who's gonna do it? Is it the team doctor? No, because the team doctor has team interest. Is it the French doctor? Then I saw a comment saying, yeah, the French riders are gonna be benefited. For example, in the tour. So it's all very difficult to know when you take the right decision, and yeah, there will be a lot of miscommunication and problems with such ideas.
There's a huge gray zone in that idea, that's for sure. But the fact that he says we need to protect the rider's
Yeah,
health, that's totally right, in my opinion. We all
yeah,
remember riders crashing in the first days and then continuing for 2 weeks with pain on their shoulder, with yeah, whatever they got broken. That's
yeah.
not human.
Don't understand me wrong. I completely agree with that fact. But it's yeah, like in football, there is in soccer football there is the concussion protocol, etc., and that's something that happens in cycling as well. But those checks are so vague and have to be decided so quick for the race doctor at that time that you can't examine the rider good enough. So we have seen riders back on their bike 2Ks later. They go left to right because they have a bit of problems, and it's so difficult. Like yeah, they are human beings and we have to care about their safety, but yeah, it's a sport that matters about time. So every minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes that you lose while being medically checked, you have to chase back at one time. So people, riders who have the adrenaline in them, even after they crash, they just want to get on that bike as fast as possible. And I think that regulation need to be more strict about a doctor give him the time he needs to examine the crashed rider, but then allow that rider maybe to get in the draft or something of a car to get in the peloton.
Were you surprised by the fact the idea came from Unzue?
Uh, yeah, because Unzue isn't the guy who comes a lot in the media with um yeah groundbreaking things. Um, I remember him mainly of the Movistar Netflix series, but it's weird. But then I dived into it, and then I saw like the last couple of years the amount of bad luck Movistar had in the first 2 or 3 stages. it's insane. So in that
Uh,
aspect, it's quite logical that
I've got it written down here. They lost 3 times a rider in the first stage of the tour, the last 7 years. So Tour de France 2023 stage 1, Movistar loses Enric Mas in a crash. Tour de France 2021 stage 1, Movistar loses Marc Soler. Tour de France 2017 stage 1, Movistar loses Alejandro Valverde in the opening time trial. So yeah, now you can get why he says it, you know?
But yeah, we have to know it's cycling is changing. Within the next 5 years, we will have a major change within cycling. And now all the managers know if they bring things in the media, bring ideas, people are listening to it because they know that one cycling project. We don't know a lot of it, but still, that are all things that they know. And if they just pump some information in the media, some ideas, they all have an interest in something. Like Movistar knows we have bad luck in the first stages. Let's try that substitution thing. Important thing to know. Unzue talks about changes in the first week, and then the manager from UAE talks about substitution in the last week. So there you see a different, conflict
Well,
of interest between the two.
you already mentioned it. There were a lot of comments coming from team managers on Unzue's idea as well. Matxin, the manager of UAE Team Emirates, he said this: who's going to evaluate if the crash is severe enough? And what about fatigue? After 2 weeks, fatigue is very similar to being sick in a Grand Tour. I like a more simple approach. Every team has the right to make one substitution in the last week.
So there you see the difference between, and that's only two teams. It's Movistar and UAE. First week, last week, it's Movistar aspect is, the bad luck they had. They tried to get a substitute in, and UAE knows let's have a fresh workhorse in the last week alongside their leader. But the
both
first part of the first part of his quote mentioning fatigue looks very similar to being ill, sick in the last week. That's a very good point.
Yeah, that's what Tom Bolen said once a couple of years ago as well. He said after 2 weeks, you have the feeling you have to vomit every morning, every evening. And that's almost the same as being sick. But both UAE and Movistar agree on the fact that there should be substitutions. And also Brent Copeland, the manager of Team Jayco AlUla, he quote tweeted our tweet and he said, 100% agreed, even though this goes against tradition, which is always a difficult concept to agree on. Cycling is one of the few team sports that don't allow substitutes for injuries. It would make sense, and if you wanted to take one step further, you could even contribute to evolving race tactics. The only thing is the UCI would have to govern the substitution situation closely, so no teams take advantage of it. But here we go with UCI again.
And it's impossible to keep control and keep track of everything that happens. You want a substituting in Grand Tours, and then what about a Paris-Nice, a Tirreno? Do they want a substitute system in there as well? For me, it's impossible to arrange.
This is basically only about Grand Tours.
Yeah, I know, but still, if you allow it in Grand Tours, then maybe another team manager will say, "What about a Dauphiné? I lost the leader first day."
Yeah, but that would be bullshit.
Yeah, but it's
So we've got the opinions of 3 managers now. They basically agree on bringing substitutions. Copeland said that change is going against tradition, and that's also what Unzue said. He said that a lot of teams are worried about the future of cycling. They want to look for solutions in order to make the sport more competitive, but cycling is too conservative. And he also said the rules may be a little softer. And that is where Patrick Lefevere, manager of Soudal Quick-Step, comes into play. Yeah, the legend, he said, By bringing substitutions, you erase all the history of Grand Tours. The challenge is to keep on going for 3 weeks. It has to remain human, but we aren't going to create softies, right?
Uh,
Classic
I
Patrick.
know Patrick Lefevere gets a lot of criticism, but in this case, he's right. The first part is you erase cycling history. Second part is part of a Grand Tour is surviving 3 weeks. Um, that's what young cyclists dream for, to ride a Grand Tour and to finish the 3 weeks, to arrive in Paris, to arrive in Madrid, to get to that finish line in 21 stages. Uh, and then the classic Patrick sentence: "We aren't gonna create softies." Yeah, it's typical Patrick Lefevere. But he's 100% right.
But
With his
still,
statement.
Yves, he says you erase all the history of Grand Tours. But 100 years ago, the riders were doing 400 kilometers a stage. They had to repair their bikes themselves. They had to look for food themselves. Yeah, these days that's gone as well.
But you have a difference between a 1 week stage racer. The king in 1 week 1 week stage races is Primoz Roglic for me. And then you have a 3 week stage race, a Grand Tour. If you yeah, if you get substitutes in, then what are you gonna do? For example, a neo pro gets into the team in the last week. He is possibly he wins 2 or 3 stages because he has fresher legs than the opposition.
In my opinion, bringing a substitute in the last week is a dumb idea. Why? Um, Most of the time, you got a lot of breakaway stages in the last week. The breakaway fights at the start are influenced by fatigue. Riders who are less fatigued than others can make it easier into breakaways. But if you bring in fresh legs in that fight, yeah, come on, that's you don't even have to train to get in that breakaway then. So last week substitution seems very weird in my eyes, to be honest. But that wasn't the only idea Unzue had. He also said this: why not limit Grand Tours to 15 days? The best riders might ride both Giro, Tour, and Vuelta. It would give them enough time to recover from a Grand Tour and be competitive in all 3 Grand Tours. It would create a spectacle in which the best riders battle each other. So 2 things here: Grand Tours of 15 days, and the fact that Tadej Pogacar and Jonas Vingegaard ride all 3 Grand Tours in one season.
Is a 15 stages Grand Tour a Grand Tour?
For me, it is, but the question is, which stages are you gonna take away? If you take 2 sprint stages away, sprinters will be mad. If you take a mountain stage away, GC guys will say, yeah, I don't got the time to battle and then to gain some time. If you take a time trial away, Remco Evenepoel is going to say, I'm not coming.
Like Jonas Vingegaard from Visma, he gets stronger through a Grand Tour. He has that fatigue resistance that's incredibly he's incredibly strong within that last week when fatigue kicks in. So then he is just then he can't use his power properly, or his biggest strength is erased, is gone then, and he has to do it in 2 weeks. A Grand Tour is 3 weeks, and the whole thing of it is building up fatigue towards the last weekend, the last tough stages where we can create a difference, and where the strong men are separated from the weaker men.
And what about the fact that they would ride all 3 Grand Tours in one season if Tour de France, for instance, was only 15 days?
Are you certain they are going to do the 3 Grand Tours when there are 5 stages less? No, it's still is a issue to peak for a long time. So if it's 2 or 3 weeks, yeah, you still have to get that peak or as high for 2 months, or go down in your fitness peak and then go up again. So the issue remains the same if it's 15 or 21 stages. It's very difficult to peak for a longer period than 2 weeks. So
If Jonas Vingegaard says, nope, I'm only doing Tour de France, I can't imagine all the other Grand Tour riders will say, okay, you can go to Tour de
Yeah.
France, we'll do all of them.
it will all depend on the cyclist if they want to do the 3 Grand Tours, and I don't think it will influence their program a lot if it's 16 stages instead of 21 stages. They still need the build up towards that Grand Tour, towards their big target. And if it's 16 days or 21 days, they don't care. The tour remains the most important thing, and it's not, oh, we have to ride 6 stages less. I'm gonna do the 2 other Grand Tours. No, that's bullshit.
So now we've got all the information about the substitution idea. What's your conclusion?
Bullshit. It's you have the rider's safety, rider's health is very important, but I think you need to find another way, like I previously mentioned. Maybe give the doctor the time he needs, but give permission to the rider, if he's allowed back on his bike, to get a free ride in the peloton or in the group that he crashed. If he crashed in the gruppetto, then he needs to get a free ride back to the gruppetto. But working with substitutions, etc., it's too difficult to organize, and you rely too much on people's decisions. No, I don't think it will work.
And what about a possible substitution until day 3 in a Grand Tour?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. If there is a substitution system, it would be like that. First 3 stages, and then this system can be used. That is the only thing that can happen in the first 3 stages. But then it's quite a pity if you crash at the start of the 4th stage, then then you have the same issue as you crash in the first. So
that are the rules.
yeah, but I'm not a believer of the substitution system. God damn, such a difficult word.
Right, Yves, is there anything you would like to add to the substitution idea?
No, I think I said what I wanted to say, and it's a topic that a lot of different discussions, a lot of different opinions. One guy will say I'm in favor, the other will say I'm against it, but it all belongs in the story of changing cycling in general. So I'm interested to see the next months, years, how our sport will develop.
All right. There's only one thing I'm still curious about, and that's the audience. What's your take on the substitution discussion? Feel free to drop your ideas in the comments. But for now, that's it for today's short Domestique Cycling Podcast episode. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you later.
See you later.
I've got the spots, the sickness. There's be twins in my brain.